Good day everyone. I am April Maysita Bancora from Group 4 and I am the first reporter. So our topic is about Bruner's constructivist theory. So before I will proceed to my discussion, I will read the learning objectives first. So it describes the development of the child's ability to represent knowledge, explain how the spiral curriculum works, and demonstrate appreciation of discovery learning as a teaching strategy. Okay, so Bruner's constructivist theory. Jerome Seymour Bruner. Jerome Bruner was one of the founding fathers of constructivist theory, and he was one of the famous proponents of constructivism. He is an American psychologist and educator who developed theories on perception, learning, memory, and other aspects of cognition in young children that had a strong influence on the American educational system and helped launch the field of cognitive psychology. So, Jerome Bruner is a well-known psychologist who has made immensely meaningful contributions to cognitive learning theory and human cognitive psychology in the field of educational psychology. And Bruner was a senior research fellow at the New York University School of Law. And his other fields of interest include general philosophy of education, as well as history. And he is one of the most influential constructivists, and he was influenced by Piaget cognitive development in children, and his ideas widely discussed among educators and children and teachers rather. Okay, so Bruner's constructivist theory. So it focused on creating and understanding meaning, contextual revolution as opposed to the cognitive revolution, and goal of motivation is to make learner as autonomous and self-propelled a thinker as possible. Because Bruner's work emphasized the importance of understanding the structure of a subject that being studied. And the need for active learning, the basis for true understanding, and the value of reasoning in learning. It is a general framework for instruction based upon the study of cognition. Okay, so this is the theoretical framework of Bruner, and it have a major theme, which is learning is an active process in which learners construct new ideas or concepts based upon their current or past knowledge, and how a group of knowledge is able to be constructed to be best understood by the learner, and where the learners can select and transforms information, construct hypotheses, and can make decisions. It suggests it is effective when faced with new material to follow a progression from inactive to iconic to symbolic representation. And this holds true even for adult learners, because Bruner believed that the most effective way to develop a coding system is to discover it rather than being told by the teacher. Okay, so I have here the main concepts of Bruner's constructivist theory, but I will discuss first the representation of knowledge. Okay, so representation. Bruner suggested the ability to represent knowledge in 3 stages, and these 3 stages also become the 3 ways to represent knowledge. Okay, so the first one is an active representation. At the earliest ages, children learn about the world of actions and physical objects and the outcomes of these actions. Okay, so this mode acquired around 0 to 1 year old, and it corresponds to sensory motor stage of Piaget. And I have here an example. Okay, so the baby shaking the rattle, di ba, sa mga aning age is wala pa dyan na sila yung mga nahibawan. So sa pagplay nila sa rattle, naa na sila idea nga ay nga ni on the eye, and sa next nga maka-play na sad sila og balik sa rattle, kanang they already know how to play the rattle. Like they kay makahibaw na sila nga i-shake ready siya para mugana or whatsoever. Because infants stores information in the form of muscle memories, and learn by doing and by remembering the feel of actions. Okay, so second is the iconic representation. So this second stage is when learning can be obtained through using models and pictures. The learner can now use mental images to stand for certain objects or events, and this representation allows one to recognize objects when they are changed in minor ways. Okay, so this representation, this mode acquired around 1 to 6 years old, and this representation is an image base, and the first one, which is an active representation, is an action base, and this second stage involves images or other visuals to represent the concrete situation enacted in the first stage. Okay, so it use of pictorial images to make actions or objects and concepts in a display easier to find, recognize, learn, and remember. Okay, so I have here an example. So the slippery road sign and please stand here. Okay, so iconic representation are used in signage and also computer displays and control panels, because signage can be used for identification or serve as a space-efficient alternative to text, or to draw attention to an item which an informational display. Okay, so here, first example is the slippery road sign. So, diba, if you are driving in the road, if makakita ka ani nga sign, makahibaw na ka nga unsay imong buhaton, like kana mapahinay na ka, diba? So maskin sa picture na to makitan, makahibaw na ta or maka-learn na ta if nanatay knowledge if unsa ang ato ang buhaton. Next is please stand here. So makita ni nato siya mostly sa mga malls or sa mga office, basta in public places, diba? Labi na karon nga naay COVID na kanang nata sa kanang it's pandemic. So diba, if makakita ka ani nga sign, so makahibaw ka nga kani nga sign is nagpractice og social distancing. Okay, so the third one or the last one is the symbolic representation. So in this third stage, the learner has developed the ability to think in abstract terms. This uses symbol system to encode knowledge, and the most common symbol systems are language and mathematical notation. Okay, so it developed last and the most important because it is language-based thinking, where the students can think and communicate precisely with words, numbers, and other symbols of information. Because aware the student information, the information will store in the form of a code or symbol, like such as language. And among the three representations, or among the three stages, symbolic representation is the most adaptable form of representation, like for actions and images, and have a fixed relation to that which they represent. And this mode acquired around 6 to 7 years old, and this representation correspond to Piaget's operational stage. Okay, so Bruner advised that teachers utilize and bring together concrete, pictorial, then symbolic activities to facilitate learning. So before children can comprehend abstract mathematical operations, teachers can first have the numbers represented inactively, and then iconically, and then where children can later on handle number concepts with concrete objects and only with numbers and number signs. Okay, so Bruner illustrated his theory in the context of mathematics and social science programs for young children, and it is one of the most influential. He is one of the most influential psychologists who has laid the foundation for groundbreaking researches in cognitive psychology.
Okay, good afternoon. So after we learned the representation of knowledge, which is one of the main concepts of Bruner's Constructivist theory, so let us move forward to the spiral curriculum and discovery learning. So are you familiar with this? Maybe some of you, otherwise are not. So spiral curriculum. Bruner stressed that teaching should always lead to boosting cognitive development. Students will not understand the concept if teachers plan to teach it using only the teacher's level of understanding. Instruction needs to be anchored on the learner's cognitive capabilities. The task of the instructor is to translate information to be learned into a format appropriate to the learner's current state of understanding. Curriculum should be organized in a spiral manner so that the student continually builds upon what they have already learned. So, meaning to say, in spiral curriculum, teachers plays a vital role in translating the information to be learned in an organized spiral manner. So, the teachers should not only level by his or her only level of understanding, so that the student, it must be organized in a spiral manner so that the student continually build upon what they have already learned. So, in a spiral curriculum, teachers must revisit the curriculum by teaching the same content in different ways depending on students' developmental levels. So below are the principles of instruction stated by Bruner. So there are 3. First, readiness. Instruction must be concerned with the experiences and contents that make the student willing and to be able to learn. So yes, in order not to get bored in the discussion, instruction must be stricken with the experiences and contents that can arouse the appetite of the student to listen and learn. That is readiness. Next is the spiral organization. Instruction must be structured so that it can be easily grasped by the student. So yes, so it must be structured, clear, and concise so that student will catch up and understand the instruction quickly and easily. So make it well organized. That's the spiral organization. Lastly is going beyond the information given. So instruction should be designed to facilitate extrapolation and or fill in the gaps. So in spiral curriculum, teachers should make a sense of initiative to go beyond what was the given content. Like, if the information given is lack, or do you think student need more explanation, then go beyond. Explain and fill in the gaps to unlock the missing part of the lesson. But remember to limit your exploration. So keep in touch only with the relevant to the domain. So do not just talk whatever you wanted to say. It must still relevant to the domain. So that was the 3 principles of instruction stated by Bruner. Okay, so next is the discovery learning. So this is the last main concept of theory of constructivist. So what is discovery learning? It refers to obtaining knowledge for oneself. Teacher plans and arranges activities in such a way that students search, manipulate, explore, and investigate. Students learn new knowledge relevant to the domain and such general problem-solving skills as formulating rules, testing, and gathering information. So most discovery, so when we say discovery learning, so there are set of activities that teachers prepared for us to quest and extrapolate, and with that, we can learn new knowledge out from the process we've gone through. So most discovery does not happen by chance. Students require background preparation. So once students possess prerequisite knowledge, carefully structuring of material allows them to discover important principles. Okay, again, most discovery does not happen by chance. Means that we already acquired that knowledge before. We already meet these things before. Indeed, we have prerequisite knowledge that let us the opportunity to discover new learning. Very good. So that's discovery learning. So what is example for this? So learning becomes more meaningful when students explore their learning environment rather than listen passively to teachers. So yes, it is very true because I can relate this back when I was elementary or even high school. I really get bored when I am just listening to the teacher passively. So I rather choose to explore my learning environment and have some little fun through learning through exploration like that. So what's the example for that? In elementary school, teachers might use guided discovery to help children learn animal groups like mammals, birds, reptiles. Rather than provide students with the basic animal groups and examples for each, the teacher could ask students to provide the names of type of animals. Then the student and teacher could classify the animals by examining their similarities and differences. Category labels can be assigned once classifications are made. This approach is guided by the teacher to ensure that the classifications are proper, but students are actively contributes as they discover the similarities and differences among animals. So yes, so I remember this animal group lesson when I was grade 5. So we already know the animal groups like mammals, bird, reptiles. So what make so discovery learning? So instead of providing the basic animal group, because it is given, so the students and teacher classify the animals and examine the similarities and differences. And with that, the student discover the similarities and differences among the animals. So discovery learning. So how about during high school? So a chemistry teacher might use mystery liquid and have students discover the elements in each. So the students could proceed through a series of experiments designed to determine if certain substances are present in a sample. So using the experimental process, students can learn about the reactions of various substances to certain chemicals and also how to determine the contents of mystery substances. So yes, very good. So this is basic in chemistry subject in high school. So discovery learning, as they conduct experiment if a certain substance are present in the sample. And then as the experiment go through, they learn about the reactions of the various substances and how to determine the contents of the mystery substance. So that was the discovery learning. So that's all in my part, and I hope you learn. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Robelan A. Lagari and I will be discussing the four major aspects that should be addressed in a theory of instruction according to Bruner. So the first aspect is predisposition to learn. He introduced the ideas of readiness for learning. Bruner believed that any subject could be taught at any stage of development in a way that fits the child's cognitive abilities. He believed that learning and problem solving emerge out of exploration. Part of the task of a teacher is to maintain and direct a child's spontaneous exploration. So for example, the teacher might fill a glass with water and ask the students how many coins they think they can put in a jar full of water without any water spilling. So, ang students ma-curious sila og pila ka buok coins masud sa glass. So, kung mubutang og teacher og 25 to 50 coins sa glass without any water spill, ang katong activity, it will lead to an exploration of displacement, surface tension, variables such as the size of jar, and how full the glass is, and so forth. So at the activity, the students would be encouraged to explore various alternatives to the solution of the problem by conducting their own experiments with jars of water and coins. So next is structure of knowledge. The ways in which a body of knowledge can be structured so that it can be most readily grasped by a learner. Bruner emphasized that a role of structure in learning and how it may be made central in teaching. Structure refers to relationships among factual elements and techniques. Bruner offered considerable detail about structuring knowledge. One is understanding the fundamental structure of an object makes it more comprehensible. Bruner viewed categorization as a fundamental process in the structuring of knowledge. Details are better retained when placed within the context of an ordered and structured pattern. To generate knowledge which is transferable for other contexts, fundamental principles or patterns are best suited. The discrepancy between beginning and advanced knowledge in a subject area is diminished when instruction centers on a structure and principle of orientation. This means that a body of knowledge must be in a form simple enough for the learner to understand, and it must be in a form recognizable to the student's experience. So according to Bruner, any domain of knowledge can be represented in three ways or modes. So mo ni ang set of action, mo ni an active representation, the magset ka og images and graphics, mo ni gitawag og iconic representation. And by a set of symbolic or logical statements, mo ni ang symbolic representation. So for example, sa playground na ay balance beam. A younger student can act on the principle of the balance beam and can demonstrate this knowledge by moving back and forth on the seesaw. And also, he can make or draw a model of the balance beam, hanging rings, or show how it is balanced. And finally, the balance beam can be described verbally, orally, or written. So, the action, images, and symbols would vary from one concept or problem to another. Next is, we have the third aspect, the effective sequencing. No one sequencing will fit every learner, but in general, the lesson can be represented in increasing difficulty. Sequencing or lack of it can make learning easier or more difficult. Spiral curriculum refers to the idea of revisiting basic ideas over and over, building upon them and elaborating to the level of full understanding and mastery. So, ang sequencing, according to Bruner, instruction should lead the learner through the content in order to increase the student's ability to grasp, transform, and transfer what is learned. In general, sequencing should move from inactive, hands-on, or concrete to iconic, which is visual, to symbolic, which is description in words or in mathematical symbols. However, this sequence will be dependent on students' symbolic system and learning style. As we will see later, this principle of sequencing is common to theories developed by Piaget as well as other cognitive psychologists. So next is reinforcement. Rewards and punishment should be selected and paced appropriately. He investigated motivation for learning. He felt that ideally, interest in subject matter is the best stimulus for learning. Bruner did not like external competitive goals such as grade or class ranking. So the last aspect of Bruner's theory is that the nature and pacing of rewards and punishment should be specified. Bruner suggests that the movement of extrinsic rewards such as teachers' praise toward intrinsic rewards inherent in solving problems or understanding the concept is desirable. To Bruner, learning depends on a knowledge of result when it can be used for correction. Feedback to the learner is critical to the development of knowledge. The teacher can provide a vital link to the learner in providing feedback at first, as well as helping the learner develop techniques for obtaining feedback on his or her own. Next is we have categorization. Bruner gave much attention to categorization of information in the construction of internal cognitive maps. He believed that perception, conceptualization, learning, decision-making, and making inferences are all involved in categorizing. Categories are rules that specify four things about objects. The four things are criterial attributes, required characteristics for inclusion of an object in a category. Example, for the object to be included in the category of car, it must have four wheels and engine. Also, steering wheel to be included in a category of car. Next is the second rule prescribes how the criterial attributes are combined. So katong mga attributes sa criterial i-combine siya para mo-form siya into car. The third rule assigns weights to various properties. So for example, it could be a car even if a tire was missing. And if it was used for hauling cargo, it would be shifted to a different vehicle, to a different category of truck or perhaps a van. Diba? So, ang third rule. The fourth rule sets for acceptance limits on attributes. Some attributes can vary widely, others are fixed. For example, a vehicle without an engine is not a car. Likewise, a vehicle with only two wheels would not be included in a car. So there are several kinds of categories. First is identity categories. Include object based on their attributes or features. So perhaps sa criterial attributes. Diba na yung mga objects, like mga attributes nga ma-form sila into a car. So muna siya identity categories. Next is the equivalent categories. It provides rule for combining categories. Equivalence can be determined by affective criteria which render objects equivalent by emotional reactions, functional criteria, or based on related functions. Example, truck, van, and car, or motor vehicle. Diba? Ang kani sila nga naa sa example, pareha sila nga mudagan. So, pareha sila function. So, nabilong sila ana ang category. Another example is ang apple. An apple is still an apple whether it is green, ripe, dried, or etc. So, ito siya identity. Apple to siya. Pwede siya mahimong food, diba? Ang apple. Kay makaon siya, functional. Then, it is also a member of botanical classification group. So, sa formal. Moto ang apple. So, moto ang examples of equivalent categories. Next is coding systems. Coding systems are categories that serve to recognize sensory input. They are major organizational variables in higher cognitive functioning. So, going beyond immediate sensory data involves making inferences on the basis of related categories. Related categories form a coding system. These are hierarchical arrangements of related categories. So, Bruner's theories introduced the idea that people interpret the world largely in terms of similarities and differences. This is a significant contribution on how individuals construct their unique models of the world. So that would be all about Bruner's constructivist theory. Thank you for listening.